What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Last week, we took a look at what year 2 and 3 wide receivers my model thinks is going to break out. This week, we will do the same thing at the running back position. If you didn't see last week's video, check it out. It's in the description. But I explained how I have one model that evaluates prospects into the rookie season, how they're going to perform, and a second model that evaluates a player both as a prospect and then looks at what they did in year 1 and it projects them into years 2 and 3. Now, there are definitely more names the model can look at the wide receiver position, so it's just given a bigger pool of players. There are more of them drafted every year. There are more of them that are starting each week, but there are 4 year 2 and 3 running backs my model really likes and thinks will grow a lot based off of their rookie season numbers. A few players that the model does not like are Najee Harris, Dameon Pierce, Elijah Mitchell, Isaiah Pacheco, and Brian Robinson. I'm not going to say that they're all going to bust or anything like that. You know, it's not basically look at them and saying they can't be productive, but the model is expecting a drop in production compared to their rookie season numbers. Everyone will go over today's video that it thinks is going to break out is going to vastly exceed their rookie season numbers, at least what it's projecting. These players, it's thinking it's going to drop. We've already seen that play out with Najee Harris and Elijah Mitchell, but Pierce, Pacheco, Robinson are all heading into their year 2 seasons now. I can get on board with the takes on Pacheco, on Brian Robinson, since neither of them was drafted super high, meaning that the teams aren't overly invested in them. And it's not like any of them did anything in year 1 to where we're like, oh, their role is locked in. Both of them had their moments. Pacheco obviously had much better moments than Brian Robinson, but neither one of them proved that there's just a 0% chance that their respective backfields aren't going to bring someone else in, give them more touches. And so I wouldn't say their roles are overly secure. As for Pierce, I do actually think he played really well in year 1, and I'm not a huge believer of Devin Singletary, and so I am not shying away from Dameon Pierce, even though the model projects him to produce worse than in year 1. And again, the model's not saying that that whole list is going to be trash, just that they won't improve on the rookie season numbers. Although, actually, it is saying that Brian Robinson's going to be trash. I don't think I have ever seen one of my models hate a player as much as it hates Brian Robinson. But we're not here to talk about busts today. We're talking about breakout running backs. First player we'll go over is James Cook. Cook was taken in the late 2nd round last season and honestly performed really, really well. He only averaged 6 half PPR points per game. So the overall numbers when you look at a season aren't that great. But on a per touch basis, he was fantastic. 5.7 yards per carry, 8.6 yards per reception, both highly efficient numbers. But what's most exciting is that there really is so much room to grow. He didn't crack 20 snaps in a game until week 13. Once that happened, he was never under 20 snaps, including their 2 playoff games. They still trusted him in the playoffs. He also only scored 3 touchdowns on a team that ranked 3rd in the NFL with 3.2 offensive touchdowns per game. So he's got plenty of room to grow in the touchdown department. We know Devin Singletary's gone now, which frees up 177 carries, 52 targets. I know that Dameon Harris is now in town. That honestly could hurt the touchdown ceiling for Cook if they just don't give Cook that job. They give it to Harris. Well, he's not going to have, 10, 12 rushing touchdowns if he's never on the field in the red zone. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could impact his touchdown ceiling. But really, there is plenty of unknown with how they're going to use Dameon Harris. Harris has seen his efficiency drop in 3 straight seasons. He's never been a high-end receiving threat, maxed out at 23 targets last season, gained only 5.7 yards per reception. So James Cook should be in line for a big increase in at least targets. At the very least, he's going to get a lot more targets this season. And given how explosive he was last season, even ranking 1st in percent of runs that gained 15 or more yards, I have to imagine that he's going to see a really nice uptick in carries as well. I don't think they're just going to give him more targets. I got to think they're giving him more carries too. So I agree with the model on this one. He's not a lock to go off. No one on this list is. No one really ever is when they're not going in the first couple rounds. But I think he's set up really, really nicely heading into year 2, and he comes at a really nice discount at ADP. Another player the model likes is Jaylen Warren, which is pretty surprising because I do know for a fact that the model puts a lot of weight into draft capital, just looking at it, saying, well, when players are drafted highly, teams are more invested in them, right? And so when you have a first, second, third round player, a team gave up a lot more to get them, so they're going to give them a longer leash. They're going to give them more opportunities. When someone spent a later pick, didn't even spend a pick on Jaylen Warren, he went undrafted, you have to prove a lot more to get that playing time. But he just played so well in year 1 that, you have to think he's going to get more touches in year 2. 4.9 yards per carry and 7.6 yards per reception on the same offense that Najee Harris had. 3.8 yards per carry, 5.6 yards per reception. He also had a really strong breakaway run rate. He was highly efficient with his targets. He was able to earn over 100 touches on an offense that had a 300 touch running back. I think that's like the biggest one is like Najee Harris got his workload. Like he got plenty of touches last season. So for Warren to still get over 100 touches, that's really, really good. Now, the big issue with Warren is, well, that 300 touch running back is still there and he's not going anywhere. And so Najee's going to get plenty of touches this season. That obviously is going to hurt Warren. They can't both get 300 touches, right? But we do know that the Steelers really want to run the ball a lot this season, and every indication from beat reporters thus far has been that Jaylen Warren played well enough last season, has played well enough in camp, is expected to play well enough in like when real camps happen in July, that they're anticipating an increase to his touches this season, especially if Najee Harris continues to be extremely inefficient like he has been for 2 consecutive seasons now. There's even been some reports that they could share the backfield, like they could be on the field at the same time. I personally almost never buy into that report. It happens time to time, and it can be a way for them to kind of, put Warren onto the field with Najee Harris, not completely go away from Najee, but still give some touches to Warren. I would just say, like, they're not going to do that every play. It's going to be a relatively small amount of plays. So don't look at that report and think, oh, wow, like it's going to be like, 1A, 1B because of this. It could be a 1A, 1B if Warren produces really well, but not because they're splitting the backfield at the same time. But I do think, like, in a lot of people's mind, like, Najee was, like, featured in the second half of last season, but that's really not true. Like, his fantasy production went way up, and people are attributing that to him playing better. It was the touchdowns. He just scored a bunch more touchdowns in the second half of last year. If anything, the split got closer, right? It was basically a 60-40 split in snaps in the second half of the season. We really saw Warren eat into Najee Harris's receiving workload late last year, and he even threw in, a 2 double-digit carry games in the last 4 weeks. So we saw Warren taking over a lot of those receiving snaps, but then also still getting plenty of carries on the ground. So ultimately, Warren does still need Najee to get injured to truly break out, right? We're not going to have a situation where Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren are both running back 2s. That's not going to happen. But he goes late enough where that's kind of the case with everyone, right? I mean, he's going pretty late in drafts, one of the final running backs you're going to end up taking. And so that's the case with a lot of players. And my model saw enough from him as a rookie to think that he can earn more playing time in year 2, even with a healthy Najee Harris. And if he's productive, which, I think he's going to be productive, he could push even more than just like a slight increase. He could get a decent increase. And then if there's an injury, Jaylen Warren is going to be awesome. Third running back we go today is Rachaad White. And this is actually the take that my model is most confident in. It does think that James Cook can almost double his production from last season, finishing as roughly like a low-end running back too. But it sees the potential for Rachaad White to crack the top 12 running backs this season. Now, White wasn't nearly as efficient as these first 2 running backs we talked about, average an awful 3.7 yards per carry, 5.8 yards per reception. He had an elite 68% catch rate, but that doesn't make up for the fact that like those 2 are really bad. 3.7 and 5.8 are not good numbers for carries and yards per reception. Most of that, though, had to do with the offense. Fournette averaged 3.5 yards per carry, and for as much as I've hated on Fournette over the years, if your 2 running backs are averaging 3.5 and 3.7 yards per carry, that efficiency is very likely to do with the offense, not that both running backs you have are complete trash. But the big reason that White, looks so good with the model is the receptions. I mean, he caught 50 balls in year one. That's with Fournette now leaving behind another 83 targets. Now, some of those are probably going to go away because we know Brady loves to target running backs. He's not the quarterback anymore. We don't know what that target share is going to be. But let's be honest, his team's going to be losing a ton of games. There's going to be a million garbage time receptions up for grabs. And he just had 50, and he wasn't even the lead running back in terms of like on the ground or through the air. Like, there are so many receptions up for grabs. And you look at this depth chart, he's definitely better than Chase Edmonds. No one's going to debate that. Keyshawn Vaughn is a bust. He's not going to get many touches. Sean Tucker on this roster right now is honestly the only one that I would be worried about. And it's a possibility he still doesn't even make the team given his heart condition. So we've got Rachaad White in a potentially featured role coming off a rookie season where he was tied for 12th in targets among running backs, despite only playing over half the snaps 4 times. And how did he play in those 4 games where he got at least 51% of the snaps? He averaged 92 total yards with 4.5 receptions per game. And you can get him in the early 8th round on Underdog right now. So if that's an ADP you want to take advantage of before it goes up, which it definitely will go up as we approach training camp and into August, sign up for your first Underdog account today using promo code FFA. You'll get my Underdog rankings for free, Underdog strategy articles for free, Underdog strategy app for free. Plus, you're going to see your initial deposit doubled up to $100 with the ability, of course, to draft as much 8th round Rachaad White as your heart desires. My final running back, the model thinks is going to break out this season, is Khalil Herbert. And the model actually has slightly more confidence in Herbert breaking out than Jaylen Warren, which is a little bit surprising to me because of the receptions. Herbert has never been a high-end receiving threat and likely never will be. There is no evidence thus far that Khalil Herbert will be a good receiving back, will command targets. That offense also isn't going to generate many running back targets. And so, there's nothing that the model has seen where it's like, oh, no, but look at this. He's going to have a ton of receptions. That's not the case. So I'm a little surprised it's more confident than Jaylen Warren. But with that being said, Herbert is just such a fantastic pure runner that I think the model is just willing to overlook the fact that the targets probably won't be there, just knowing, well, the carries probably will be. He's good enough to earn carries in the NFL. He also has the build to handle a large workload on the ground. And he's got plenty of speed for his size. He's not, James Cook level fast, but he's certainly fast enough to get to the second level. We've seen him break off multiple long runs in his career. He's a good running back, and he's fast enough to where you're not concerned about that. I think Jake Seeley did a really good job of just showing how productive Herbert has been on what was, or is, I guess, a fairly limited sample size, but he basically isolated the games where Herbert had at least 10 carries. And it's kind of ridiculous how good he's been in those 10 games with at least 10 carries. He's had, at worst, 50 rushing yards in a game. He's averaged 5.1 yards per carry. Basically, look at the stat line. I'll have it on the screen here. You give him the touches, he's going to produce very high-end numbers on the ground. You watch him play, he's a very, very good running back. Again, as far as the receptions, I do think those will be fairly limited. And so maybe not someone you want to go all in on in a full PPR league, right? If you're in a full PPR league, the upside is limited because there just is no world where he's getting a ton of receptions. But especially in standard formats for sure. But in half PPR formats where a lot of you play, Miles Sanders was a high-end running back 2 last season. He only had 78 total receiving yards across the entire year. Jamal Williams was running back 1 despite 73 total receiving yards. Nick Chubb has proven for years that he can produce running back 1 numbers on limited receptions. And so while those are definitely the high end, right? Those are the high-end outcomes for Khalil Herbert. Those are the best case scenario. He's being taken as the 40th running back off of boards in the early 11th round. He doesn't need to be a running back 1 to pay off that sort of ADP. I think he can be very productive this season. I do think he'll lead this team in carries, and I do think he still has a lot of upside. So those are 4 running backs my model thinks are going to have breakout seasons this year. Let me know if you agree with my model's predictions in the comment section below, or if there are any players you think should have been mentioned. You can also see the rest of the results on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. I'll be back tomorrow to go over the latest ADP changes, Sunday to talk about an optimal underdog strategy, and then Monday for another episode of Mock Draft Monday. That, my friends, is this one. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting the like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.